Hey there, and welcome everybody to another video on advanced Apple Music. I am super excited today because we're finally going to start building the foundation for the ultimate setup in Marvis Pro for Apple Music. As always, I've got a link in the description to the Marvis Pro app. It's absolutely worth the money, so highly recommend you get it. But this is really where we're going to start seeing this subscription pull away from Spotify and other services. So I'm going to help you set up some basic frequently requested sections on your homepage, and that's going to help you reconnect with your library in a whole new way. Now, the first section we're going to set up is one for recent albums that we've added to our library. Now, you might say, big deal, Apple's already got a recently added section. It shows up right in the Apple Music app, right on the homepage. And while that's true, the thing that's annoying is that there's no way to tweak it, specifically to only include actual albums versus just random one-off songs that you might have added from playlists or other places. This section, and another thing is you won't be able to customize kind of what metadata you see below there. So I personally use ratings, but you could have that show when you added the album to your library, what the release date was, how long it is in terms of minutes or tracks, so a whole bunch of different things. So the section that we're going to set up is going to have customizable requirements to make sure that only albums of a certain length are going to appear. And that's going to make it worth your while to tap on one, such as this one right here, and start playing it from right there. So let's jump down to the Add a Section button all the way down here at the bottom. And we are going to select the library from these options right here. And from here, we're going to select albums. Now, like I talked about in one of my last videos, this is going to be an unfiltered view of all albums in your library, just like if you picked albums in Apple Music. So it's in alphabetical order, and it's a complete list of every single album that you've got. So what we want to do is narrow it down so that what shows up is relevant to us and to what our goal is. So from here, you're actually going to open up the section settings. Now, you can either do this by holding down the section name right there and clicking on Edit. Another place where you can get this is if you're in the section already by tapping on there. You can click on these two little arrows right here and get to the settings section. Now, if we think about this logically, what I want to do is filter down to albums that are A, truly albums, and B, we want it sorted by ones that have been most recently added first. So just two simple rules on here. I do take it one step further and I have it limited to 50 albums. I don't really need to see my 51st most recent album. Honestly, even 50 might be too many, but you got to draw the line somewhere, and 50 is kind of where I like to do it. You are able to shuffle by album as well. So keeping it to pretty recent albums is really important. If for you, that number may be 10, and then you can shuffle your 10 most recent albums, whatever it works for you, is what you're going to want to limit it to. So first things first, let's get the sort order out of the way. Now, it does have sorting available on this main edit screen right here. So there's descending, you can sort by date added. I have found, though, that sometimes this can create some weird results when you also make smart rules. So the smart rules might create a little slice of your library, and then these rules, for some reason, they just don't mesh super well. So if I'm doing albums, I'm generally going to ignore this section unless I'm doing shuffled. I've just found some kind of weird stuff. So I'm actually going to click on Smart Rules, and what I'm going to do is sort. I'm going to sort it by date added, and I'm going to do descending on there. Now, if we back out of here real quick, it should update as soon as we get back. Sure enough, here are the most recent albums that I've added out of 6,389. So let's take it a couple steps further. Let's add another smart rule here. Let's add a filter, and we're going to click on title, and we're going to change that over to track count. So what I want to do is I want to have any track count that's greater than 4, so I can get any EPs that may be complete or things like that. I do like to still open those up, and as long as an album's got 5 songs or more, I'm totally all right with having that show up on here. That number may be different to you. You may set it at 10, or you may set it even lower. And one other thing you can do too that may even help you go take this a step further is to add another filter, and you could even do complete album. So if you're trying to like create a list of what are the most played albums I have, or what are my truly highest rated albums of the year, for me, I delete all the songs I don't like. So I may have some albums that are rated pretty highly, but it may be inflated because I've gotten rid of the filler songs. You can click on complete album is true, and then this will only have albums that have every song included in your library. But for this section, I don't really want that, just an option for you in the future. So, and then last, from the same menu, I'll click on add and I'll click on limit, maximum items. Let's bump that up to 50. And then we should be able to click away from here and see that sure enough, these are my most recent albums that I've added to my library right here. So that is how you're able to add that section. And one thing that I do want to take a quick look at is the fact that we've got some other options actually in this main edit screen. You can change the displayed metadata, and I actually, on my most recently albums, I use ratings extensively, so I have mine display the ratings, but you could do a number of different things from a metadata standpoint. Like I mentioned before, we could do the year, and if you back out, that's going to show what year these albums came out. You can see I have a nice mix of 2022 and earlier. So there's a lot of different things that you can have show up. You could do the average play count per song. So on some of these, it's going to be nothing. And then as you go further back, you're going to see that gets higher and higher. Also, if we jump back into these settings here, a couple other options that are interesting are the fact that you can change the cloud filter to local only. So if you only wanted to display albums that you have on your device, that's a really easy way to do that. This refresh on track change will mean that if you're listening to songs and you have it set up to do some kind of, when did I last play this or play count type thing in the background, everything will change in this section based on the song finishing at that moment. You can also just drag from the top of the screen to refresh, but it's another option to have that. And it's a pretty nice one depending on what type of section you're building. And then extended library right here is another really important one. Not so much for this because this section is just albums I have in my library, but extended library would include anything that's in any of your playlists, but not necessarily your library, or that you've played over Apple Music, but still haven't added in your library. So it's basically taking your library plus everything in any playlist you have saved, Apple Music or otherwise, or anything that you've listened to recently. So a use for this may be a lot of people want to know I've hearted a whole bunch of songs that I was listening to on playlists, but I didn't add them to my library. How do I find a hearted song list of songs that aren't in my library? Well, you could turn this on and then filter out anything that's in your library, and then you could see at a glance, okay, here's all the music that I love that's not in my library. And then the last thing is you do have some layout options. Grid is almost always going to be the best for albums, in my opinion. A list for albums just doesn't look quite the same, I don't think. I still have that nostalgic feel for CD cases. So anything that's going to be an album for me, I'm generally going to do a grid, and you can mess around with some of the size options there too. And if you want like really big ones, because you just love album artwork, you've got that. I like to personally strike a balance between size and also being able to see, quite a few as I'm scrolling through to get a good sense of what music I have available. Alrighty, let's set up one other album section here. Now, this is probably the one that has genuinely changed my habits the most and reconnected me with a lot of music that I've had forever, but haven't listened to in a long time. I've created much more complex sections than this one we're about to set up, with a lot of really interesting things they can do. But this one has probably been the one that's gotten me back to basics the most, and so it's really near and dear to my heart. What we're going to do is set up a section that's going to display random albums. And what we'll do is, I don't have this on mine, but we'll add a little bit of flair to it. So we'll add only albums that we haven't listened to a song from in, let's say, like 2 weeks or something like that. So it's going to be the same process to begin. I'm going to go back to my main home screen here and look how big these albums are on there. So same process to start. Going to click on Add, Library, Albums. Again, completely every single album that I've got in the library, which is kind of almost what we want. But we've got to filter out a few things. So let's jump in here. We're going to click on edit. We're going to go into the smart rules again, and we're going to start out with that same filter. We're going to do track count, and we're going to say greater than 4. One other way you could do this is by length of the album. So, I mean, you could do, if you have maybe an album that only has 2 songs, but they're each 10 minutes long, you could change this from track count to duration and do duration is greater than 10 days. Wouldn't bring up a lot of results, but let's say greater than 15 minutes. We'll do it that way just since it's a little bit different than the last one. Alrighty, and then so we are going to add another filter, and so this one is going to be by when we last played something. So again, we're going to try and make this only things that you haven't played in the last 2 weeks. So what we're going to do is we're going to filter out anything where the last play was in the last 2 weeks. So we're going to say last played, and then we're going to do is not in the last 14 days. So this will get rid of any album where you've played any song off of it in the last 14 days. So we're going to close the rules. And then in this case, since it's a shuffle situation, I'm a little more comfortable using the sorting on here. So we're going to click on shuffled. And you can see that things are starting to move around in the background as it cruises along here. So now what we have here, let's actually make this a little bit easier to see too. So we're going to go down and we're going to change the grid view. We're going to make 3 rows and 4 columns. Let's see what that looks like. That's still a little big for my taste. Let's do 3 rows and 6 columns. All right, that's pretty good. So again, this kind of feels like a CD book right here, right? So this has completely changed the game for me. This has made it so that I can see at a glance albums. And the thing that's made this even easier and so just intuitive is the fact that you can drag and drop these albums into your queue, which is represented down at the bottom here in this little section. So I'm going to try and use this on the mouse. I've never done it before, but let's say that I want to listen to this album after I'm done listening to whatever I am. I can just take this and I can drag it down here and it'll add it to the bottom of my queue. I can scroll around a little bit further, and let's say that I'm feeling a little reggae. Grab this, add it to the bottom of my queue, cruise along, and oh, Led Zeppelin 2, haven't listened to that in a million years, add it to my queue. And then if I open this up, this may have a massive queue from other songs that I started, but eventually we should get down to those albums right here. So you can see that it's added those to the queue. For some reason, the Led Zeppelin one didn't take, but that could just be the mouse. So that has made it so that I can quickly scroll through my quote-unquote CD book and add 5 or 6 albums to the queue and just listen to full albums again, which, man, I probably went 5 years of just listening to nothing but playlists, and it feels so good to be able to listen to an album start to finish and to be able to find and load it up this quickly. One more section here that we'll create, and this last one is going to be something that's frequently requested on Apple Music, and that's how to pin something to the home screen. A lot of people have a few favorite playlists, and it's a pain in the butt to scroll through everything in Apple Music if you haven't listened to it recently. If you have, then usually it'll show up, but if you're somebody like me and you're all over the place, trying to find playlists is just not intuitive on Apple Music whatsoever. So let's say that we want to add some playlists and have them pinned. Now, keep in mind that I'm going to be adding it to the bottom here, but at any point you're able to click on Manage, and you can organize your sections. You can easily get rid of them, like this one that I created. You could move it on up. So that's where you can really take the stuff that you listen to the most, like for me, these song mixes, recent albums, random albums. Like that's a lot of what I'm doing is going to be in those top 3. You can move it up to the top. So keep that in mind that while I'm going to be adding this section on the bottom, you can move it up top very easily. So let's say that we want to get any playlist that we've made, and let's say that you're like me and you make a yearly playlist of songs you like. So I'm going to pin any of my yearly playlists to a certain section and then show you that you can move that. So it's going to be the same starting process. You're going to click on Add, you're going to click on Library, you're going to click on Playlists this time instead. So we're going to make a section of Playlists. Now this has every playlist that I have all through there, so not useful in its current state. So same starting point though. I'm going to hold on that. I'm going to click on edit, and then we're going to make a few rules to be able to pin playlists. Now the easiest way for pinning, if you're only looking at something that's like, I don't know, 4 or 5 items, the easiest way to do that is to add a filter and to do it by title. So for me, let's say that I'm going to do 2022, which is going to be the name of um, my two playlists. Now I also have, as you've seen in some of my prior videos, I've got a playlist for stuff that I've found in the last month and stuff for future albums to listen to. So I'm going to have title contains 2022. That'll take care of my two playlists that are for the year. I'm going to add a filter. Title contains, I'm going to say future, and I'm going to add a filter. Title contains last month. And then the key here, if you're going to pull in something with any of these, is to change this all right here to any, and pull back out. I don't like grid as much for playlists, so I'm going to switch that to a list, and we'll do 4 for that. And so there you go. You've got my my 2 yearly playlists, and then the 2 others that I specified right there. And I love that it shows how many songs are in them, so I know that, oh man, I've got 69 nice songs to listen to take a look at. And I have this actually represented as albums when I click on it, but a lot of them just show up as songs. These are the songs I found in the last month. So at a glance, you can kind of see, oh shoot, I found 182 songs so far this year that I like, and 21 of them are really, really good. So this is a good way to quickly pin playlists or anything else. You could do the same thing using title for albums. I should point out though that one thing that may be useful for playlists is this feature right here, which is show nested playlists. So if any of these 4 were in playlists and I didn't have that turned on, they would not show up. It only shows kind of home level playlists by default. So if you've got things in folders and you want it to pull them in too, you can turn that on. I don't really need it, so I can just leave it right there. And then if you have a lot of playlists that you're putting into a category, you can have them either grouped by type, so Apple Music, Smart Playlists, or whatever. You could say, nope, I don't want that. I want them to be alphabetical, and that's it. So again, a number of different options you've got right there. And then, you always have the metadata option as well. So I show that I really like seeing the track count on there, but it's also interesting to see some of these other options like play count. How many total plays do these all have? So 562. This just shows the megabytes because I haven't played those yet. So you can see that my found sounds last month is early February is very similar to overall for all of 2022. All right, one last thing to quickly show you. This isn't creating a new section, but it just shows you a few things that you can do with a section that's already created. Now, one of the downsides about Apple's lockdown on the API is that you can't download a section through Marvis. So I couldn't just open up one of these like top albums of 2022 and download this. However, you're going to need a little bit of a workaround, and then you're able to do that. So I'm going to use my section that's already built in. That's got my top albums right here, and you can see I put it in downloaded right here. So if I click on this, this has all of my albums that I've rated at least 3.2 stars or above. It gives me about 230 albums, and for me, that's about what I want. You can tweak your rating or number of likes or things like that if you wanted to, but this is a smart section, so it'll pull in new stuff automatically, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's downloaded. I need to actually find a way to be able to do that. So the way that you're able to pull that off is by using this options section right here. And you can see that there's a number of different options. So you can shuffle songs, you can shuffle albums using that. And that's, again, something that's asked for frequently, and it's so convenient. If you don't want to drag and drop the albums like I showed earlier, you can just shuffle the whole section and it'll go by album instead of by song. Absolutely fantastic. But you can also add an entire section to a playlist. So this will actually add every song in here, in all of these albums, to a playlist of my choosing. And then what you can do is turn that playlist to be downloaded. So let's say that I'm going to add this. I'll click on utilities, and then I've got downloaded phone albums right here. So if I click on that, any songs that aren't already in there. Yep, it says 76 new songs were added, ignored over 2,000 songs. So it just added 76 songs worth of albums to that. And that playlist in the background on my phone is actually downloaded. So that's how I'm able to keep a section downloaded. I have a kind of background utility playlist. And then as I add, these albums are never going to go down and be removed from here. So as I add more albums to this smart section, I'll just infrequently, about once a week, add them to that playlist, and then they'll be downloaded and available for offline. So really helps out in situations when I'm, either out in the wilderness on my bike or on an airplane. I know that I've got these 230 amazing albums available at any time. So really convenient for that. Now that's all I've got for you today. In my next video, I'm going to show you how to create a new home screen within the home screen. So it's a really good feature to organize sections under a header and just make your music easier to access. So stay tuned and take care.